Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for talking to us about this austere and challenging budget year. What was the most challenging part of putting this proposal together?
Having to tell your friends no. It's often what the mayor has to do, is that you get to go first in this. We present a draft budget, and in an environment where the council and the public have been very clear, they don't want new taxes, they don't want new fee increases. And so as a consequence, this has to be an all cuts budget. And that means saying no to folks and things that I've prioritized and cared deeply about, but we just simply can't afford this year, particularly now when working to prioritize and protect public safety, homelessness, housing, and infrastructure.
Should the last few years have been an all-cut budget instead?
Well, I don't know that there would be public support for that or council support at that time, particularly with federal relief funding through the pandemic and other things. We didn't have to do that. I have offered and suggested cuts in the past that were not accepted by the city council. But I think the situation we find ourselves in now, where last year cutting over $300 million, this year with $120 million, really we don't have really any other option. And so it will necessitate making reductions to things we all care about in order to protect the things that I think are most important.
Something I noticed yesterday during your press conference was there were no promises about closing the structural deficit. Is that just pie in the sky at this point?
No, that's still my objective, but I don't have full control over that, right? We've already heard folks who say we can't make that cut, that's not okay, without any corresponding, you should cut this instead. And I'm going to hold the line as best I can and really ask the council and the public to go with me on this. Let's make all the difficult cuts. Let's really just eat all our vegetables this year, establish a new financial baseline for the city, and then responsibly regrow our organization over the next 2 years. That is my strategy. That's my preferred approach, but I recognize that I don't get the final say in this. The city council does. And then lastly, even if we do everything as I'd like it to be done, we can't control the factors at the state, national, and international level that, believe it or not, absolutely impact this proposal. And the way that what we're seeing, the turmoil in the Middle East, rising gas prices across the entire globe, that impacts you, that impacts your viewers, but also impacts the city of San Diego. You may have one car. The city has 5,000 vehicles. When you see gas prices going up as high as they are, that absolutely adds to our budget deficit. And so that could result in us maybe falling slightly short of where we want to be. But I choose to be optimistic and hope that we can make all the right choices through the budget process and see some relief at the national, international level that allow us to structurally balance and again regrow the organization over the next few years.
Last year, we saw so much pushback from the public, and I think it's fair to say it was a pretty chaotic budget negotiation. Why is it important for these cuts this year to materialize?
Because last year, I think we had the benefit of leaning in on revenue. A lot of folks around here never really want to be honest with the public and say that, we hadn't adjusted parking meters in nearly 2 decades. We haven't always been fully cost recoverable on a variety of things that the city performs that other cities do recover the costs on. We've now implemented all that, not without significant pain. And the result is that people don't want more of that. Okay, well, if we don't have the blend of cuts and revenue, and we're only doing this through cuts, this is necessary. This is the only path to meet our legal obligation to pass a balanced budget. I know that folks sometimes get confused. They know at the national level they don't have that responsibility to be balanced. We do, and we will meet that obligation. And if it does not include revenue, then it necessarily means cuts.
There was ample criticism last year about the budget not being equitable in some of its earlier forms. What are you doing this year to mitigate those concerns?
Well, I took last year as a learning lesson. I think it's always important after you've accomplished something like the passage of our budget to take a step back and evaluate yourself, others, how can we improve upon this process? And I've done that this year with this proposal where we started far earlier than we ever have, brought the city council in sooner, listened closely, tried to provide them as much data as I have so that they have it now. And their process often is between budget introduction and budget adoption of basically 2 months. But talking with council members as early as the holidays to say, this is what I see coming, this is kind of what I'm thinking, what do you think?
It feels like we never really stopped talking about last year's. It was sort of just a fluid transition into this budget cycle, no?
Well, that's 100% correct, because what was adopted last year over my objections was not truly balanced. And when passing revenue enhancements, but then passing ordinances that did not match the dollars that they put into the budget, meant that we were having a mid-year deficit. That did come to pass, but the fact that I knew that was going to happen, and I put in a hiring freeze to contain our costs, means that we didn't have to reopen the budget and make neighborhood service reductions in January or February. But it isn't because it was a great budget, far from, but that's perhaps the incentive for me to say, okay, let's try and figure out a better way. And being transparent, consulting with the council, providing them information, hopefully gives us a running start so that we're sharing the same information environment, the same data. At the end of the day, we're talking about math, and what we have to do is remove about $120 million worth of spending. This is how I see that we can do it. I'm hopeful that we'll have a majority of the council that will agree with me.
Your budget proposal has some reductions to homelessness spending, but you also say that's one of your key priorities. How do you square that?
Because much of our funding comes from our state and federal partners. And President Trump has issued his proposed budget, which basically zeroes out these programs. Governor Newsom has put forward his budget proposal, which cuts the state commitment in half. So 0 and a 50% reduction necessarily means we'll have less money. Now, thankfully, the voters of San Diego passed Measure C, which does give us an ongoing local resource for homeless services. And that is what I'm hoping, that with some efficiencies, that we can basically hold the line on this and continue to get the results that we're seeing, where we had one of the biggest reductions in street homelessness in the state of California. I want to do that again this year, and that necessarily means in this difficult budget year, trying as much as possible to protect the number of shelter beds that we have, while necessarily meaning there's a trade-off, which is more reductions elsewhere in the city.
How do you decide what's the priority there?
We have asked San Diegans to give us their priorities in this budget, and over 10,000 of them completed an online survey. And what was heartening, Joey, was that their priorities are the same as mine. If we were in my office, you'd see I have a whiteboard where I list my 4 priorities: keep us safe, build more housing, reduce homelessness, and fix our roads. That's basically exactly what that survey got back. And so it isn't to say the other things aren't important, aren't critical to our city and its greatness. However, when San Diegans were asked, 10,000 of them said, we want to see police, we want to see fire, we want to see less homeless people. We're going to do our level best to do that. And they all said, fix the damn roads, which is what I'm intending to do.
Are you anticipating seeing any of those arts and culture grants dollars this board?
Well, I'm certainly open to doing that, but it has to come with a cut somewhere else. And in this particular case, it's regrettable. It's absolutely regrettable, but the city can't afford its own bills. How can we be making grants to other organizations outside? If you and I were struggling to balance our own household budgets, we would stop discretionary spending. We wouldn't be buying birthday gifts and going on vacations. And the arts are absolutely critical. This is not to minimize what they do, but a situation where we are literally taking taxpayer dollars and giving it away just means that we're going to have worse roads and less police officers and firefighters. I just don't think that that's a great strategy, knowing that all of our arts and culture organizations drive on these roads and call our police and our fire department. If you're okay with the condition of our roads, then I guess we can probably restore that. I don't think San Diegans are okay with the condition of our roads, and I think they'd rather see $11 million going to public safety and infrastructure rather than to these third-party nonprofit organizations.
Let's talk about revenue now. Why is hotel tax revenue down?
Well, I would say macroeconomic issues, right? If you, when you look at it, what you're basically talking about is a decline in international travel and in business travel. And I would say international is probably pretty obvious. When our national leader is saying you're not welcome here, people don't come here and they choose to take their business somewhere else. We are seeing a huge drop off in international travel, and lack of business travel is inclusive of government travel. If you want to doge the entire federal government, guess what? We have a huge amount of federal spending in this city. A lot of folks come here to train, to do workshops and whatnot. That's all gone. And as a consequence, there's just fewer people staying here.
When do you think revenue from these various tax sources is going to improve?
Well, my hope is that this election will tell Washington to knock it off, bring some more sanity to our national and international politics, and as a result, do things like reduce conflicts overseas that are raising gas prices, provide more certainty when it comes to federal funding for things like homelessness and infrastructure. That kind of settling of the chaos would go a long way to improving our bottom line, as well as that of every other city and state in this country. So I'm definitely rooting for some more sanity and some more calm in Washington, and I'm hopeful voters will deliver that message this November. I think that's the quickest way I can see a change in this. Obviously, we have a president whose only thing that's predictable about him is the unpredictability.
Is that shirking your responsibility as the leader of this city, though, by passing the buck to Washington?
No, listen, the buck stops right here. There's no question about that. But I want to be honest and transparent with the public that I can do absolutely everything perfectly. But if gas prices continue to rise, I have zero control over that. And in fact, the 5,000 vehicles I have to put gas in every single week here at the city of San Diego, that's going to come at the expense of their neighborhood services. What I can control is our spending, our revenues, the policies that we advance, and whether it's the hiring freeze that got us through fiscal year 26 to the proposal I put forward, which is balanced and responsible. I'm doing what I can, and I'm hopeful that other leaders that have decision-making in the city will follow my lead.
Given the state of the economy right now, are you anticipating another run at a sales tax increase measure?
No.
Full stop.
It's not coming from City Hall. It's certainly not in 2026. There is no white knight revenue coming in to save this budget. This will be done solely through cuts. That's what the council wants, that's what the public wants, and that's what's going to get done. If there's any attempt at revenue, it will probably not be any sooner than 2028, and it's not going to come from City Hall. It would be a citizen-led effort. Either way, no is the answer. We have to do this all through cuts.
What happens to this budget if any of these efforts to repeal the new revenue sources from last year come to fruition?
What flies right out the door, right? So if those who are advocating for returning to a situation where half of our city is charged for trash collection and the other half gets it for no additional fee, that literally will double the size of our deficit overnight. So everything that people are concerned about today in terms of reductions to neighborhood services, libraries, rec centers, arts and culture, magnify that by 2. Right? And even smaller reductions. Later today, the City Council will be considering modifications to the special events parking fee in downtown San Diego. That is projected to cost the city as much as $1.3 million. That's $1.3 million in less road repair, less streetlight repair. And while I understand that there's an interest in eliminating that revenue, no one who's advocating for that has told me where we're supposed to find the corresponding cuts to balance the budget again. So there are plenty of folks who are under the mistaken impression that you can have things for free and it won't cost you anything. And I understand where that comes from. A lot of people who've sat in this office over the years have told people you can do exactly that. And how did they accomplish that? Well, they were pilfering the pension system, they were privatizing city services, they were doing all kinds of kind of goofy stuff that basically allowed us to tread water and act like nothing was going on here. I'm not that guy. I will always be 100% honest with San Diegans and tell them that things cost money and we have to balance this budget and do it responsibly.
Let me ask you about the workforce quickly. Every business needs to find efficiencies somewhere. What has the city done to do that in this organization?
It's only a half-hour show, right? So I think we need several of your episodes to do it. So we've done everything from consolidating city services, eliminating, I believe, at least 9 city departments, eliminate the chief operating officer position, and I took on those responsibilities myself. I'm trying to lead by example. We have eliminated hundreds of positions with more coming in this new proposed fiscal budget.
How do you decide which jobs are superfluous?
Well, the city council has asked for a reduction in what they call middle management. I think some are under the mistaken impression that these people don't do anything. That is far from the truth. We have a 12,000 person organization. We need supervising to make sure the work gets done. But basically what we have done in terms of some of the ones I've eliminated in the past, these would be people who were hired to help us with the pandemic response. That is now over. Those positions were eliminated.
Well, that gets to a question I had. The city's workforce has grown over the last decade. The population hasn't necessarily mirrored that growth. So why did the city need these extra extra employees?
Very simple, because the city previously was not an employer of choice. What we were was a training ground for public servants. They'd come here for a year and then leave. What we had was not the lack, there was a lack of a difference in terms of bodies, but Joey, what we were doing was paying out extraordinary amounts of overtime. You have covered the fact that the police department overtime budget has come down. Why is that? Well, we're increasingly filling these positions. I was at our police dispatch center just 2 days ago. Woman working there told me she'd worked for the city for 22 years. This is the first year she didn't have mandatory overtime as a part of her job. By properly staffing our organization, we were able to provide better services to San Diegans. And again, I understand that previous leaders of this city maybe weren't honest with folks and say, no, we can provide this level of service with this number of bodies. That simply wasn't the case. What they either were doing was deferring, neglecting the infrastructure, or forcing city employees to work longer hours. Either way, it wasn't sustainable, and what we've put in place, I think, is something that's more sustainable.
When you are negotiating union raises, whether looking back 3 years or ahead 3 years, what is the calculus knowing that other city services are necessarily going to be on the chopping block?
First off, you have to understand that city services are performed by city staff. So if we are not an employer of choice, and if folks do not want to come work here and stay here, we're not going to be providing city services. When we are properly staffed, we can get amazing things done. 35% of our road network repaired in my time as mayor. A dramatic reduction in crime and in homelessness, historic increases in housing production. We're getting this done with city employees. Now that said, the existing contract that is about to expire did represent a significant increase in pay. Why was that necessary? Because my predecessor held pay flat for nearly a decade. And while prices were not staying flat for employees, so people were not staying here. Providing a raise that could actually allow people to come to work here and choose to stay here, I think is very beneficial to the taxpayers of the city who demand that these employees serve them. Providing modest cost of living adjustments going forward is how we will keep them here long term. Every time I sign every month I sign letters to every employee who has a 5-year anniversary of the city. It brings me joy to sign letters to folks thanking them for 30, 35, and sometimes 40 years of service. What do those people represent? They represent the memory of this organization, the mentors of this organization. They are the people who know every neighborhood, every corner, every property. And that level of expertise is what allows us to do more with less. And I'm very interested in making sure that people who are high quality employees who work hard and believe in public service stay here for a full career.
Looking back 5 years, when it comes to the budget and city spending, what would you do differently?
Well, I think I might have tried to be more judicious with some of the initiatives that either I offered or that city council members offered, because frankly, those are the things that we're cutting right now.
Like what?
Well, the Office of Child and Youth Success. It was a city council-led initiative that comes with not an insignificant price tag. Now, do we care about our youth? Of course we do, and I understand the motivations for doing it. But if that comes, basically at this point, I'm recommending that we eliminate that office and preserve after-school programming at our city libraries. That's the choice that we have to make, and it probably, in retrospect, would have been better to never start the office and instead keep those dollars. But I have to respect the fact that we have 2 branches of government here, and the legislative branch wanted this. I agreed to it. But now I'm in the position of having to tell people no, including many of my friends. It's difficult, it's hard, but that's what San Diegans employ me to do, and I'm here to do it. I will hold the line, make the tough calls, be honest to everyone involved, and get us through this tough time, hopefully stronger and on a firmer financial footing.
Can San Diego still be a world-class city while you're trimming the fat and getting back to meat and potatoes?
Absolutely. In fact, that is a necessary prerequisite for greatness. We cannot be a great city if we're unsafe. We can't be a great city if our roads are falling apart. We can't be a great city if we have thousands and thousands of people living outdoors in unsanitary conditions. These are prerequisites for greatness. We will get through this time period. We will regrow the organization responsibly, and we'll restore some of the things that have been cut. But for the time being, this is what is necessary to make our legal obligations to balance the budget and to meet the expectations, both in terms of priorities and the directive to not raise taxes or fees. This is what that budget looks like, and I hope that we can adopt it quickly and then set about making sure that we regrow our organization responsibly.
Certainly no easy task.
That's okay. I'm happy to do hard work. This is my hometown. I love it. There's nothing I won't do for our city.